everyone, it's Margaret Manning here. Welcome to 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. My guest today is Jane Duncan Rogers. Jane runs an organization called Before I Go Solutions, which is a not-for-profit organization that helps people to design and create their end-of-life plan. Now, Jane Duncan Rogers is an author. She's written 2 books. The first one was inspired by the death of her husband and the process they went through in preparing. And then the second book is something to help you if you're looking to go through that process to, to be prepared. So welcome, Jane.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to have you here. We, as you know, have a large community of women over 60, and it's a time of life where you start thinking about these things. And I'm really happy that you're here to talk to us about some of the practical things that people can do. Your organization is wonderful, and your website, beforeigosolutions.com, is wonderful too. So I want to start by just asking you kind of the simple question, what are the reasons that you really do need an end-of-life plan? Give us 4 or 5 reasons.
Okay, so the first one is if it's the one that everybody thinks of, if you die without a will or an out-of-date one, or that it's invalid in any other way. And that's nearly always what people know about. And we know it's a good idea to have a will, but how many of us have one? Not that many, actually.
It's true.
The statistics show that there's a great deal of room for improvement in that area. And the reason, though, to have one is because you are going to be saving time and money by having one if you put it in place. Because if you don't do it, then those left behind, they're going to have less of your inheritance. That's what's going to happen, because more of the money will go on fees, and it will take a lot longer to sort out the mess.
And it's not just money, it's things. I mean, it could be that you want someone to have something treasured that you had, something special that you wanted them to have that brought back a memory or something significant. And when someone comes into your home, especially like we'll talk about later, if there was an accident or a sudden death, what did they know what to do with your beautiful things you wanted them to have?
That's right. And it's really easy to underestimate how important it is to be able to do that and to carry out somebody's wishes. So, for example, in my family, my parents have always been very good about talking about this sort of thing. And even 20 years ago, my mum said, right, I want each of you, there's 4 of us, each of you to choose 3 things. We'll put a white sticky label on them. And when we die, that's what you get. And then after that, you take it in turn to choose things. And it's kind of been normal in our family to do that. And actually, they have just recently died, and that has happened. And it's all gone according to plan.
I just got goosebumps. No, seriously, because, that just shows such a wisdom. I know we did an article once, I think in Sweden now, they have this, I think it's called death cleansing, where after 60, you're kind of expected to do what you just described your parents did. So that's good. So that's number 1, without a will. What's another reason?
Okay, another one is if you become ill without an advance directive in place. Now, not so many people know about an advance directive. It's what used to be called a living will, and sometimes it's called an advance decision. But it's all the same thing, which is basically a document that states what kind of treatment you don't want to have towards the end of your life. Very important that, because in our culture, we are going to get treated to be kept alive no matter what, because that's how our medical profession has been trained. Unless you've stated and have it in place that when you were compos mentis and could think for yourself, that you actually don't want particular kinds of treatments. This is quite a big thing to think about, because nobody wants to do it, understandably. But
you don't want to think about it. It is difficult. But Jen, as you were talking, I just realized that we kind of jumped into this whole conversation about, in quotes, end of life plan, without really saying to people that this is a document or something you put together. And Jane's got her book guides you through this process. That's like the umbrella for everything else. Like you might think about a will separately from an advance directive. When we say end of life plan, I just wanted to clarify that it involves a lot of different angles of what to do, when you die. So
yeah, it does. And actually there are what I call 6 components. One of them is the legal stuff. One of them is the end of life stuff, the end of life wishes. That includes the advance directive. Another is the funeral. And these are the ones that people know about. But then nowadays we have our digital life as well, which carries on unless we do something about it.
That's so important.
So there's that area. And there's also the oh, I've forgotten what they are. I can't
Well,
believe
it's
it.
okay, and it's okay because people can go to your website. I mean, this is a lot to remember, and it's a lot of moving parts here. But I think what's really important, just to let people know that the end of life solution that you're putting forward in your writing is, is end to end. And so we've talked about not having a will, not having an advance directive. So the third thing was, this
if
is a
you
really
die
good
with
one.
Yeah, the third thing is if you die with no record of your wishes for what you want to have happen after your death. Now, lots of people say, oh, I don't care, just bung me in the ground and forget about me. But actually, that is not very thoughtful for those who are left behind, because the people who are left behind are going to be grieving naturally. And when you're grieving, it can be really much more difficult to make decisions that you might normally find relatively easy to make. So if you've been able to give any kind of instructions at all, and most people think, okay, so I've told them I want to be cremated or buried or whatever, that's enough. Actually, there's lots more questions that can be addressed. And it is really a wonderful thing to do, to be able to carry out those wishes, because you're giving them the last thing that they wanted, if you like. Okay, so it's you. They don't know about it, probably. We don't know what happens after death, but it's for the pleasure of you. And also, if you know that that's what they said, then you're very much less likely to be having arguments in your family. And unfortunately, that is something that happens often.
You mean between the people that are left? Yeah. Well, that actually is a really, really good point. I think that, even just jotting down, like you said, cremation or bury, but then who do you want or not to have at your funeral? What kind of, even simple things like music or just the atmosphere or the perspective. And like you say, it might be different than the people that are being left behind, your wishes, but, they would value knowing to them, you're still there present at the funeral. It's like they want to do stuff to make you happy, and that's important. So the fourth one I know is one that you've said is one that people often do forget or don't take seriously.
Maybe they don't even know about it, because when I first heard about this, I was like, I don't believe that. And it is that if you are incapacitated in any way, then your spouse cannot act on your behalf, even your spouse. Your next of kin cannot act on your behalf, even if your next of kin is somebody who's not your spouse. They cannot do that, because what you need to have in place is a power of attorney that states that you are the person legally authorized to act on behalf of yourself when you can't speak for yourself for whatever reason. I had just assumed that your next of kin would be able to do that, but that is not the case.
Interesting.
I'd also assumed that even because if you're married, that your husband or your wife can act for you, but it actually doesn't happen like that.
So if there was an accident or you have a heart attack or you something where you are not expecting that to happen, you then fall in this. Can I just ask you, Jane, before you go forward though, is this, you're UK, you live in Scotland. Do you know if this is true in the States?
In some states it will be. So what is really important in each of whatever country that you live in is that you double check what actually goes on. It is true for the UK, and it will be true for some other countries as well. Of course, I haven't investigated every single other country or every single state. But it's definitely worthwhile just Googling that to find out what actually applies in your locality.
Right. Okay, I want to mention that because we have a global community and we have women all around the world. So Jane's talking about what she knows from her own experience, but be careful. It's just one of those things. It's an obvious question, but who wants to think about having an accident or being, you just don't want to think about that. But anyway, very important one, that one. So that's cool. Was there another fifth one?
Yes, just the last one. Yes. Now, again, this is something that you might not think about because it's not very nice to think about it. But if you're not able to communicate, but you're still alive, or maybe you're at home or you're in a nursing home or a hospice or something like that, if you haven't told or communicated or preferably written down the sorts of things that you like, for example, to eat or to wear, or the kind of television that you like to watch, or the kind of music that you like, then you'll get whatever anybody else thinks. Now, that if you can't say or complain about that, just imagine how distressing that might be.
That is so true. And also what religious beliefs you might have. You may be a Buddhist and in a family of Christians, and they've all your life accepted you for what you believe, but they may not know that there are certain things that are important to you in the death and dying process as a result of your religion. And so I think that's, hospices tend to be very sensitive to that, if that's where you are at ending up, but in a hospital, not so.
No, not so, because it's not a priority, and that's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But it will become a priority if you've given them the information. And from my own experience, I can also tell that mostly the professionals want to know this kind of information, because most people are, well, we're all human beings. We all want to do the best that we possibly can for someone.
Yes.
But they can't do that without that kind of information.
Yes. So important to have an open conversation. You know, we're sitting here talking, person to person about it, and we're quite relaxed about it, as you are. But a lot of people out there are probably sitting in their chair, just not feeling very comfortable about this. And it's true, guys. We understand this, and we're not trying to be flippant or casual about it. I mean, it's really hard. But I think everyone, from the conversations I've had with 60andMe women, want to know this in their heart of hearts.
Yeah, and that's what I've found as well in my work. It's not an easy conversation, and definitely when I say to people what I do is definitely a conversation stopper.
Well,
and then there's a gap usually, and then people say, then somebody will start telling a story, because everybody's got a story about end of life, and actually it wants to be told, and people want to hear it. So where there is permission given, that helps to make this subject a whole lot less taboo.
Well, thank you for being there for these people. And thank you for the wonderful book you've written. And like I said, you have two books. One is actually the process that you went through when you had time with your husband to plan for his death and ask him questions. But then there's a really useful book which goes through all the steps and the questions that the categories we've talked about. Do you want to, what is it called again?
Yeah, I'll just show it here. That is,
there it
before
is.
I go,
The Essential Guide.
The Essential Guide to Creating a Good End of Life Plan.
Right.
And that's, if you go through that and you actually take the actions, then you will have your end of life plan, a really comprehensive one.
No, that's awesome. And then there's a workbook that goes with that, so you can actually answer the questions in one at a time. Don't get caught out. This is the secret. But anyway, Jane, thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and for everything that you're doing really to help women and men, through this transition time. It's a very challenging one, and you're doing such an amazing job. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take good care. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our 60andMe YouTube channel and also visit our website. We are a strong and dynamic community of women over 60. We're challenging aging stereotypes, and every day we share fascinating stories, interesting questions, and great conversation.